The title of this panel is An Insider Perspective on the Chinese Beauty Market. And for some, the shine and the varnish has sort of faded a little bit on the Chinese market, especially for international brands and conglomerates, as we've seen in the news. Some of them are having some struggles in the Chinese market and growth is slowing. However, China remains one of the most exciting markets when it comes to brand innovation, when it comes to retail innovation. We heard earlier today it is securely the second largest beauty market in the world. And it's true that growth no longer comes easy, but the sheer size of the market and the sheer excitement of what's going on there makes it very hard to ignore. One of the things I always say is if you want to see the future of what brands are going to be doing here in the US in a few years, get on a flight and go check out what they're doing in China. So we're so lucky that we have some market insiders to help us decode all that's going on in China. So let's start the conversation by discussing the current state of the beauty market in China. And Charles, let's start with you. You've spent the better part of the last decade and a half building the Erno Laszlo brand, with China being one of the brand's most important markets. What are some of the most significant changes that you've seen over the course of the last, call it 10 years?
And 10 years is a long time.
Yeah, we have 30 minutes. So
yeah. I think the first thing to say about China, it's always in a state of change. It moves really very, very fast. You might say 6 months in China is equivalent to 3 years in America, which is equivalent to 7 years in Europe in terms of the speed of change. It's extraordinary. The big changes probably in that period was most brands came into the market, into the retail space, into the bricks and mortar department store business. That was the channel that most people focused on. And then they moved into e-commerce led by places like Tmall, JD, etc. More recently, there's been a shift towards social commerce and entertainment commerce. If you think of Douyin as more of an entertainment commerce platform. So the platforms have changed. The players have changed. It was dominated by Western brands, premium Western brands coming to market. In this period, the local brands have learned a lot from the Western brands. They've learned a lot from the consumers. The consumers have become much more independent in their decision making. So the players have changed. The local brands are moving very fast and gaining market share. The economic backdrop more recently has changed, which is a big challenge for a lot of brands. Consumers are behaving differently. The legislation has changed, the regulatory situation has changed, so you can't make claims that you can't substantiate with clinical evidence, for example, from a marketing point of view, which has played actually into the hands of a lot of local brands because they have aligned themselves with science and efficacy and so on, so that's their proposition. So it's really moving very, very fast, and it's changing very quickly. And the biggest thing that's changed, I think, is the model. It's not an efficient market anymore. Before, you could go into the market and you could spend $1 and know that you'd make $3. Then it was spend $1, maybe make $2. Now you're losing money on your acquisition. Before, you were making money during your acquisition. And so there isn't the repeat purchase customer lifetime value formula that we know in America. So it's very, very challenging if you want to try and build a business that you're going to lose money on in the first instance. Whereas before it was very easy. It was a growing market. You made money no matter what.
Yeah. And just going back to that, I just wanted to follow up quickly because that has had an impact on sort of the traditional market, the traditional model that we're used to as US brands thinking about going into the Chinese market with sort of the TPs. Maybe you can just spend a second telling us a little bit about how it's impacted.
That's another good point. Traditionally, most brands would have, you've got 3 or 4 ways to go into the market. Most brands would have found a distributor partner who would bring the brand, they'd buy the product and resell the product on your behalf. That model is very difficult to justify today for the distributors. They don't make money. If they do make money, they're doing things that the brand might not really want them to be doing. So that's more a move towards more like a service provider model where they are paid a fee by the brand to represent the brand and provide all their marketing expertise. That's fine if the brand has got the investment dollars available to drive the marketing, but the way into the market today is more and more challenging, and unless you've got real investment money behind you and you're patient, the opportunities that were there in the past, unless you want to do things with your brand that you're not really going to be concerned about, you can sell product in China, you can sell it in the marketplace, you can create revenue. But if you're trying to build a brand, and that's probably the biggest question you should be asking yourself, is why am I coming to China? What's the reason strategically for my brand? And then you have to then build the whole model around that. There's clearly opportunity there, but you've got to relay that back to why you're actually going into the market in the first place.
Yeah. Let's talk about the consumer for a second. So Charlie, at Jing, you have your eyes and ears on the pulse of the Chinese consumer. What are some of the trends that are driving interest and sales? What are the types of brands that are seeing success now?
Well, that's also a very big question. I think I'll try to be brief.
I
think one of the biggest kind of change we've seen that happened, especially in the past few years in China, is there is definitely an ultimate shift of consumer motivation in terms of purchase. So before, in Chinese culture, it's very common to spend money and build your image, and it's to please others. But I think this shift, now more and more consumers are shifting that from pleasing others to self-indulgence. And this is especially true during COVID when consumers are locked home, and especially a lot of independent, professional, single women. They realize there's no point to me to trying to appeal to a potential future spouse or professional. It's all about how to make myself happy. So if you look at their purchase, this is especially evident in kind of the fast growing of fragrance, industry, and then the body care and related to fragrance, that we see a lot of people purchase fragrance is not to please their date or anyone, is actually to please themselves. They want to buy the fragrance they enjoy because it creates an atmosphere that's around them, right? And it's about aromatherapy. It's about their personal wellness. And then if you look at also some of the purchase, appeals from consumer side, there is a kind of a concept called the new five senses in China. The traditional five senses that's kind of is no longer the way that consumers looking at it when they make the purchase. The five new senses in China is called the sense of originality. What is your DNA? What does your brand have that's original, that is so true to you? What is your the sense of presence? Do you have an ongoing story that constantly give you a presence and engage with your consumer? Sense of atmosphere. Do you create that ambience environment, whether it's online or offline, that from the minute they walk into store to the minute they left your store, and when the minute they open their little book account, read your post, to the minute they purchase a product, right? Do you create that engagement atmosphere? There is a sense of sociability. Is it the retail experience social enough? You bring a community together? I mentioned COVID. That really is a collective traumatic experience for a lot of Chinese consumers to go through. So how does a brand can appeal to that? And we've seen some of the biggest, most successful campaigns in China recently has been these brand exhibits. Like Loewe recently launched an exhibit called Crafted World in Shanghai. So by creating an immersive experience and through exhibit, and you actually bring the community together, everyone come to learn something about a brand's history. So and then the last but not least, I think it's the sense of, I said originality. I'll come back to that.
All right, let's jump to Gabby. So I am so excited that Florasis is on our Future 50 list this year. It's one of the brands that's been on our radar at BeautyMatter for such a long time, and we're so happy that we're able to tell the Florasis story here with Gabby. So Florasis is, in a way, sort of a quintessential C-beauty makeup brand. And the brand has found tremendous virality and sustained growth through things like intricate packaging, quality formulations, and sort of these like outsized experiences that you create for your customers. Help us to understand what makes a C beauty brand tick by telling us what you're doing at Florasis.
Yeah, I think starting with our brand success in China market, we've been fairly lucky. The journey started with 2017, so you can see that the brand is fairly new. But just within 3 to 4 years, we are fairly lucky that we reached to the GMV of the annual sales of 850 million US dollar. And it's also because I think there's few success factors we are happy to share here with everyone. First, I think is the consumer journey, like what Charlie is saying, that throughout the past 5 years, consumers switching from buying international brands they're looking for something resonate with their culture, aesthetics, and also something they're proud to be, identity actually. So starting from day one, Florasis has been so unique is because we're not trying to sell a lipstick. We infuse the Chinese elements about history, heritage, and traditional Chinese medicine, aesthetics, and using it to create a brand in a very modern way. So it comes down to each one of the product design, our formulations, and what is the story we're telling. In the end of the day, we create that resonation to connect with our consumer. It's almost like awakening for them is the cultural renaissance. Because for the past 5 years, like China have explosive e-commerce growth. We were just talking about how the Douyin can make a brand. Florasis was lucky enough, has been dominating the Douyin channel. We've been the #1 since 2020, and yet today we are. But it's not the only successful factor. It's really about the consumer journey. It's really about how to make the consumer feeling proud by using your product because they resonate with them. They feel proud to be their identity as the Chinese. That is also something we're trying to tell in the global arena as well.
Yeah, and for everyone who's, we're hearing Douyin a lot. For those of you who are not familiar with that channel, that is the Chinese version of TikTok.
Yes.
So now maybe that makes more sense. So Charles, as the beauty market has matured, it's become pretty apparent that beauty brands are completely outmaneuvering Western brands in the market. Why do you think this is?
I wouldn't say.
Except for one, maybe. But
I wouldn't say they're completely outmaneuvering brands. But I would say that they have an advantage. One of the advantages that the Chinese brands have is data. They're very data-driven, and they take data very seriously. And the disadvantage of a Chinese brand is they struggle to take a risk and see into the future. But as soon as they've got 3 years, 5 years of data behind them, they really act on that. And so as the market matures, as they've seen the successes and learnings from these other brands, they can take all of that data and deploy it to their advantage. And they do that in a way the Western brands don't do, in my opinion. Their speed to market is remarkable. You know, what might take, and we heard earlier about the importance of taking time to create beautiful products, may take 2 or 3 years. That would be a lifetime in China. 6 months, 9 months is almost, I mean, makeup, 3 months maybe. It's in color. So their speed to market, their ability to jump on the trend and act is remarkable, and I think a huge advantage. But ultimately, the advantage they have is their understanding of the consumer. You talk about cultural identity. I wanted to make a statement 10 years ago that I was a successful individual. How did I do that? I used to buy Western brands and say, look at me, I've done well in my life. I'm defined by these brands that I can afford, and they now define me. Today, it's more like West was best, but now China is better. And therefore, it's more about what does that brand say about my attitude, my values, and also there's an independence in the consumer. They can make more considered personal choices. They are very well informed. And I think a lot of the brands, you're winning the cultural argument, I think extremely well, but also there are a lot of local brands winning the logical argument. High degrees of efficacy, clinically proven claims, associations with the hospitals, with the medical staff, etc. So they're not only winning a local, I understand the consumer better, but they're winning the scientific argument as well, and they're moving extremely fast.
Yeah. Charlie, in your opinion, how do you think Western brands keep up and continue to sort of unlock growth in China?
Well, I think, like, I can't agree with more what Charles just said about, the Sea Beauty brand. And I think I just want to add a little bit to that, because I think it's really important for, Western brands to look at it, understand with the success behind Sea Beauty brand. And I do agree that I wouldn't say that Sea Beauty brand has completely maneuvered the Chinese brand. But what I would say we have definitely reached the watershed moment where the level feels the play field is leveled. There used to be this halo effect of Western brands. That for a Chinese consumer, there is like, yeah, as you said, there was aspirational. Like, I purchased this brand represents an aspiration behind it. But I think that has gone. And now, so more or less, you are competing on the same level. So you have to be smarter, right? And part of it is understanding that, for Sea Beauty brands, I think a big success is that there is a cultural confidence behind the consumers to purchase something of a Chinese brand that's safe, that's effective. And actually, and then the other part I think that you also mentioned a little bit is some of the Sea Beauty brands understand the consumer very well. And that understand is not just about the data, what they like, but also the unique lifestyle. And then certain way they use beauty. For example, I think one of the biggest challenge for skincare category in China is not coming from the brands or Sea Beauty Western, is from the cosmetic surgeries, the medical spa, right? Because when you look at, especially at the luxury category, when you spend $300-400, for a skincare product, and then some consumer question, why don't I just go to a medical spa, get a laser treatment, or get a microneedling abrasion? So now some of the Chinese brands, they're very smart. Like, for example, Uniskin, a skincare brand from China, they were reformulating their product line and actually make the appeal that this is the brand that you can use after your surgery. And then they formulate and the products that's specific, even tied to certain procedures, right? But that just shows you the level of understanding they have of the Chinese consumers, how they use beauty products and use beauty regimen. And I think if a Western brand, if your brand has a very strong appeal, especially come from a science background with a lots of strong clinicals, and then have that level of understanding of how consumers, how your product appeals to them is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add
Yeah,
on
of
that
course.
because it's really resonate with one of our key and best-selling products is the setting powder. And the setting powder is basically we sell once the setting powders 30,000 units every single day. So every single days I'm speaking here, we sell 30,000 units. And why the product is so successful is because, like Charlie's saying, that we actually see the pain spot for the consumer. So before we exist, consumer can buy the international brand, but the color is not right. It doesn't fit with our skin tone. The formulation was not designed for the Asian climate, and also the ingredients might not fit with our region or our skin tone as well. So for Florasis, when we launch our setting powder, firstly, we go for natural ingredients. Actually, our setting powder is molded by jade stone, a real jade stone. Why? Because it's natural, and at the same time, it can fight with the humid in Asia. Second, we add in our orchid, and then it's a pure powders. It can correct our skin tone. So for these, many other international brands, like you said, when they found out we exist, they're trying to jump on the same product. It takes time, and it gives us the leading edge to win a market share. So I just want to add on that about the flexibility about the Sea Beauty brand.
Perfect. Well, I want to actually talk about something that really excites me a lot about the Chinese market, and that is this the distribution landscape in China. In particular, I want to talk about physical retail stores. When most brands think about China and the China opportunity, they immediately think about platforms like Tmall or Douyin or Little Red Book. But physical retail stores also have a very important role to play. And so, Gabby, coming back to you, you've spoken about the importance of physical retail stores for engaging customers and providing them with these sort of like immersive brand experiences. Tell us how you've leveraged the retail footprint in China and beyond.
I think I'm fairly lucky that I get to enjoy how international brand is entering China and how a Chinese brand is growing from the e-commerce, D2C, and now going into the retail. And we do see that shift on the China market as well. Like you said, like many of the international brands through the past 5 years, when they come to China, they say that, I'm going to start with Tmall International. I'm going to start with Tmall because that's where the market is. And then everyone come in, and the traffics and the campaigns become more and more expensive till the business is not profitable. Now they're looking into, now I might need to rethink about the retail, because retail able to create a connection. Consumer are able to feel and touch about my brand and the positioning. We always talk about it on e-commerce. It's very difficult to build that brand positioning, because consumer can only feel your brand positioning through the price. And it was so cutthroat in the China e-commerce world. So it means that you have to have the discount, and that discount might get you the sales, but will hurt your brand positioning, hurt your brand equity. And for us, we are a D2C and e-commerce brand, but we started with our own flagship store in the heart of Westlake, where our brands come from, in Hangzhou, where all the Alibaba is. We built a 1,000 square meter, 2-storage flagship store. People ask why. You are already dominating the market as a C Beauty brand. Why do you have to invest in such a big store? We say that's exactly why, because we are trying to build a brand instead of just selling the product. We need a space, the arena, to build immersive experience, to tell our story, to tell them why this product is different, what kind of story, what the culture resonate with us ever since with our kids, why is traditional Chinese medicine can be used as a color cosmetics. So we need that arena, and also to attract the people, not just opening up the app, by passing through the store, to create a human touch. So we do think that not just for us, all the other brands is actually shifting that strategy throughout the past 2 years, especially after COVID.
Charles, when building out a broad spectrum sort of strategy for China, I know that physical retail has been really important to you, but I also loved when we were chatting sort of the symbiosis between sort of physical retail and digital. So would you mind unpacking that for us?
Yes. Okay. I am not sure how to approach that question. I think the points you made earlier around why people need physical retail are very valid. Positioning is probably the number one. The Chinese consumer enjoys value, enjoys opportunities to participate in discount promotions, etc. You can't get away from that. I mean, that's just the way you have to operate in the market. So how do you balance that? How do you build loyalty? How do you build more of a relationship? The physical space enables you to do that, tell your story, things like that. It's not easy to track the consumer and say, okay, well, what we do is we start on Tmall, and then they'll move to the department store, and then they'll go to Douyin. It doesn't really work like that. There are key touch points, but each of them reinforce each other, but they have very different reasons to exist. So, for example, Tmall is the trusted point of reference. So I go to Tmall to see what the brand says about itself. The brand shop on Tmall is an authorized shop, and what it says about its pricing, its story, that's a point of reference. I go to Red to see what my peers are saying about the brand, and I will learn, because that's a peer review site, it's independent, I trust it. I'll go to the store for an experience to really feel the brand, to learn about the brand. Edutainment, in terms of entertaining me, giving me experience, giving me something that I can carry with me is really, really important. And I'll go to Douyin for the entertainment, the information. That's where all my friends are as well. So each of these platforms has a slightly different role to play. Of course, more recently, Douyin is where everybody has shifted, I guess.
Yes.
And obviously, Gabby is a pioneer on there, followed by Erno Laszlo. I like to think that we're a bit of a pioneer on Douyin as well. First premium skincare brand onto Douyin, 70 million in our first year. Just put it into context.
So marketing material. That's okay.
But it's I think it's fair to say that the market continues to shift, and Douyin probably won't be Douyin in 3 years' time. I mean, I don't know what's coming next. Pinduoduo or one of these other platforms, they're reinventing themselves. Red itself has gone through massive reinvention and will be another platform. So it's not easy to construct it like an ecosystem. You just have to sort of be in all areas.
No, if I may add, I think for physical retail, I think it's very important, but it might not be the reason I think that you think it is, right? So sometimes I think in China, like we as a media company, we cover a lot of brands activities. I would say the most common type of activation is new store opening, or it's the brand activation that happened in store. So in China, I think in a way, the store is like your canvas. It's your place to tell your own story in a very controlled manner. You see, and it's also starting point of your storytelling. So you see, so I use an example. Le Labo built a very successful flagship store in Xintiandi, Shanghai, and just amount of online discussion from that store and a peak consumer interest. I was in Xintiandi last July, and it was middle summer, very hot. 9:30 p.m. There was a line outside the Le Labo store trying to get in there. Can you imagine just every time you walk by, the we talked about sense of presence, and it must pique your interest to go in and discover more about this brand. And then you take all of that into online and discuss, because otherwise, especially someone like a Western brand, consumers do not know what you're about, right? And then even if you want to tell a story and having that physical connection and then take it along online, I think it's a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
You can use that for live streaming too.
Yeah.
If you do a live streaming in your own physical store, it's different than in a photo studio.
Exactly.
Yes, and sorry, you go.
Yes, to add on that, I think it's also for C Beauty brands, it's the culture experience.
Yep.
So for our stores, it's actually not for sale. If we count it as a retail per square meter, it's a fail. But for us, it's like you said, it's a canvas to show that who we are, and also to that the consumer to experience the culture. What kind of culture service we provide is actually the hanfu. So it's like what I'm wearing is the traditional Chinese kind of like the clothing. So I believe that everyone travel around. When you go to Japan, you wear the kimono. Why? Because you want to experience that culture. You want to immerse yourself into it. For us, it's the same. The retail store is the place we serve them a tea. They sit down, they feel the scent, they wear our hanfu as a traditional clothes. That is the circle. And you build that ecosystem to support the brand DNA as the foundation. So the consumer might not buy, but they will definitely remember us. And it's also a good way to touch point to all the other consumers we are not touching online. Because there's always the algorithm. The more you click, the more you search, you will only see that perspective.
Yeah.
But within the retail arena, you see everything.
That's true. And the other thing is that we typically rely on spokespeople, KOLs, to tell our story, and they tell their version of our story.
Yes.
So when you get face to face with the consumer, you can be much more intimate, and trust still is a very big factor. I think coming back to the C Beauty movement, the trust is there that perhaps wasn't there before, because they've started to win the argument with the technology and the efficacy and so on. So you can build trust face to face. Our beauty advisors are called BFs, which means best friends. We're the only brand in the whole of China to call their BAs BFs, and they take their role seriously in terms of journeying with the consumer and building an intimate, trust-based relationship.
Cool. So I just want to be mindful of time, and I definitely want to talk about this last topic. As Kelly and I have been traveling the world and meeting with lots of brands that are based in China, many of them have expressed this interest in sort of expanding beyond China. And so I think it's a really exciting time for C Beauty in the world marketplace. And so Charlie, let me start with you. Will C Beauty be the new K Beauty or J Beauty in the global beauty marketplace? And if not, how will it feel different? I know we don't have that much time, but.
Well, I would say, it's kind of, I actually just had a very interesting conversation with a fellow attendee about K Beauty and C Beauty. I would say I wouldn't necessarily compare it's C Beauty and K Beauty and J Beauty together at the category. And I think, but I'm confident that the Chinese brand or the C Beauty brands will succeed. And because we have a lot to offer. And one of the biggest thing is the rich library of our history and culture. At Jing this year, we actually started this new initiative called Jing, which in Chinese culture means cultural refinement and heritage, trying to draw inspiration from the cultural roots, right? And I think that when you look at, by the way, thank you guys for featuring 3 Chinese brands that, in my opinion, are really emblematic for representing the Chinese culture and drawing inspiration. Herbies, Florasis, and Documents that taking that cultural element with confidence and developing something that is innovative. But I think with that history, you're able to tell. I think they can combine the rich history with the innovation and China had in the supply chain, be able to offer a lot to the global consumers, right? So I am very confident in that.
Yeah. If you guys don't mind, let's break and let's take some questions from the audience because I do want to make sure we have some time to answer anyone's questions. Hi. Sarah's going to ask a question. There we go.
Hi, yes, I'm Sarah Colton. I'm an American perfume journalist and writer based in Paris. And I'm specialized in, I became specialized, I've been writing about the whole industry since 2000. And I've seen a whole lot of shifts, changes and waves. And, I saw I'm specialized in niche fragrances. And I'm particularly specialized in small niche fragrances because there's where I just see this wild creativity, and I want to kind of protect these people's creativity by helping them expand without dying, bursting into flames while they do it. And so my question is, these smaller niche fragrance brands, we had the nirvana of in the, say, 2015 when, oh my gosh, China, let's go to China. And it would be easy, and as you said, you put $1 down and you earn $3. And now it seems to be the opposite. Is there kind of a minimum investment that a small niche brand that's got, these people have creative ideas, they want to go to China. And is there a minimum, or is there kind of some advice that I can give these people that are just dying to go, but they don't want to bust the bank? Should they go to a distributor? Who should they go to? This is, what advice can I give to my friends so they don't have heart attacks and keep their brand going and survive?
Who wants to take that? I think anyone.
I think if you don't mind, I can take the question.
Sure.
'Cause prior to joining Florasis, I was the head of beauty for Land Crawford. So we launched most of the niche brands, like you said. So I actually launched Byredo, Dictique, and Matière Première, all those niche brand beauties in China. And to the piece of advice, because considering the time, I would say that is because fragrance is about the stories. It's about telling the story. They need to be seen in the right retail place instead of going into online. Because like you said, they're not going to win the game. There's so many other big groups, L'Oreal, Lauders, they're pumping the money just to boost up the awareness online. For fragrance, try to tell the story, and you'll be surprised at how well educated is the Chinese consumer. They love to find the niche brand because they feel that the niche brand represents their personality. It's the extension of their personal style. So the piece of advice, there's no minimum investment, but find the right retail space to tell that story nicely, be patient, and you will be really rewarding. Yeah.
Can I add a very quick point?
Sure.
I know we're running out of time. I'll come back to this question, why do you want to go into China? You have to have a reason for it. But the first thing I would ask is there any traction with that consumer outside of China? And you can seed that consumer. You can go on Red as a brand in Paris or London or wherever and build a following and an awareness on Little Red Book. And you can start to engage with that consumer in your home market. And if you start to see traction, if you start to understand the opportunity with the consumer, the role you can play in that consumer's life, they will go back, they will talk about the brand, they will maybe start reselling the brand on the market locally.
Yes.
A lot of distributors immediately look at the Taobao marketplace to see, is someone selling this brand, reselling this brand? If there are, that means there's a market for it. If there's a market for it, maybe I should be involved in this brand. So there's a sort of natural process that unfolds if the product is resonating and you've got traction with the consumer. And you can do that directly with very little investment.
Yes.
Yeah, and without going to China, right? You can actually connect with a Chinese consumer and sell to the Chinese consumers without going to China. There's this is self-promotion. We have just published a report actually in partnership with Spring on this very topic, how overseas Chinese community is a really important agent, and they can be your first customer. You already have the retail channels and work with them, and then you might find the power of advocacy could really be your best ally.
It's a slightly difficult topic, but most luxury brands don't want to admit the influence and power of the global Chinese consumer. They say, these are our revenues in France, these are our revenues in the UK. Unpick those revenues and see what's behind those numbers, and then you see the real influence of that Chinese consumer.
I love it. And we'll have to end there because we're out of time. But thank you so much to our fantastic panel. I hope this has been an enlightening conversation for everyone.